Not content with locking millions of people out of the electoral process, stripping back our right to protest and limiting our rights to judicial review, Sunak's government now wants to rob millions of public sector workers of their democratic right to strike, to force them to work against their will and allow them to be sacked if they refuse. It's unthinkable, it's unworkable, it's almost certainly illegal. And even worse, the government is willing to outright lie to the public to get away with it.
We're going to bring forward new laws in common with countries like France, Italy, Spain and others.
But what the Prime Minister wants is for teachers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, rail and border staff to be sacked if they refuse to comply with minimum service levels during industrial action. That is not the case in France, Italy and Spain. So what Sunak is planning is dramatically different, and he knows it. But that hasn't stopped him shamelessly repeating it.
They're present in France, in Italy, in Spain.
Well, this Wednesday, if we unite and we stand together, we can actually stop this completely out of control and reckless government in its tracks. Because on Wednesday, Green Party peer Natalie Bennett will be moving a fatal motion on the government's minimum service rail bill. It's a rare parliamentary procedure that can kill off the passage of the government's legislation. And it's the strongest possible opposition which can be taken in the House of Lords. And my God, it's needed. This is what the motion says. Rejected because it continues decades of attacks against trade unions and workers' rights, exposes trade unions to being liable to pay damages of up to £1 million, forces trade unions to act as enforcement agents on behalf of employers and the government, is likely to prohibit more than 40% of rail industry workers from taking part in strike action, and fails to ensure that rail services will be safe for workers and passengers on strike days. The government's rail statutory instrument requires that staff maintain 40% of the regular service, including priority routes. This will require more than 40% of staff. It effectively ends the right of some workers to strike. For example, it seems likely that signal operators on priority routes will never be allowed to strike. It's shocking, and the Department for Transport are clearly using this as a way to cripple the union's negotiating power. It's a naked attempt by the government to weaken trade unions by taking away the legal right of workers to withdraw their labour. And the Joint Committee on Human Rights has found the government's anti-strike law fails to meet the UK's human rights obligations.
We clearly have a problem with human rights law in this country that is making it difficult for us to achieve our objectives.
They don't even try to hide it anymore. Now, earlier this year, Labour refused to back a fatal motion to stop the government quietly changing the definition of disruptive protest.
We will abstain, as I say, on the fatal motion. We will not block this legislation.
This was the explanation given by Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry. Labour doesn't vote in the House of Lords to kill a bill. That's the Commons' job. If a precedent was set, the Tories could easily use their majority in the Lords to do the same to a Labour government's laws. But Labour can't kill a bill in the Commons where the Tories have a majority. They can, however, if they choose to, kill one in the Lords by backing a fatal motion, a power the Lords do have. And by now even Larry the Cat knows the Tories do not have a majority in the House of Lords. And on that, don't just take my word for it.
In the House of Lords, we only have about a third Conservative. So even after all these years, we don't have a majority in the House of Lords.
So if Labour is willing to step up on Wednesday and join others across the House in standing shoulder to shoulder with workers by backing the fatal motion, we can actually stop this government robbing workers of their right to strike. Just think about that. We can stop it. This is a defining moment for workers everywhere. It's a defining moment for the country, and it's a defining moment for all opposition parties. Because now is the time to use every tool available to us to stop this law-breaking government robbing workers of their democratic right to withdraw their labour. And yes, that includes using the power to block ministerial decrees in the Lords. It's the only way, we all know it, including the opposition. And as for this,
I understand why some people would wish that to be otherwise, but as His Majesty's opposition, we will respect convention.
Seriously? When was the last time this government respected convention? And by doing so itself, Labour actually facilitated the government restricting the rights of millions of people in this country to protest. What kind of convention did that set? So let's please not make that same mistake again. Peers from all parties now need to unite and do the right thing. If Labour, the Liberal Democrats, SNP and Conservative peers of conscience have the courage to stand together on Wednesday, we can stop this government in its tracks. We can actually stop it robbing workers of their right to strike. So let's do this. Let's unite. Let's stand together. Let's do what we all know in our hearts is right. Let's work together cross-party and stop this completely out of control government once and for all by backing the fatal motion tabled by Natalie Bennett. Let's do this together and send this government packing.